In a so-called free state, officials and stakeholders concoct solutions to problems often created by other bureaucrats and with little regard for infringements on the people. These stories are born at the apex of freedom and entrepreneurship. We foolishly advocate for the taxpayer. Brian's Beat presents Freedom Fools.
Hour 3 of Freedom Fools on WBSM. The Real ID. Doesn't that sound like something that's freedom-oriented? The Real ID. Is it useless? Is it unconstitutional? Yes, we are back for hour number 3. I'm Brian, glad to be with you on a Saturday afternoon. And as I look outside, it actually looks like it's getting brighter, at least in Fairhaven. I don't know about the calls for rain, but whatever. I'm going to talk about the Real ID, of which it's at best surreal to me. Not that we didn't know this was coming, because the first hints happened roughly 20 years ago. One of the recommendations made after 9/11 by that special Blue Ribbon Commission was, we got to figure out how to make sure something like what happened on 9/11 does not happen again. And someone in their infinite wisdom, why don't we try this Real ID out? What's a Real ID? It's a driver's license that makes people believe we've got something better. I don't know if these kind of documents can be forged today to make a Real ID, make somebody seem like they are indeed from the United States or not, a U.S. citizen. I don't know. But it begs the question. You and I need a Real ID in order to board an airplane and fly, let's say, from Providence to Louisville, Kentucky. Just saying. You get on that plane, or I guess somewhere at the terminal, somewhere there's TSA, and they're going to check to make sure that you are a U.S. citizen. So here's my question. A person from Bolivia, just happen to pick that country off the top of my head, Bolivia. It could be Peru. It could be Suriname. Just saying. They come to the United States. They have their passport, and I suppose they use their passport to get on a plane to go somewhere else. And you and I could use our passport to go somewhere else. In fact, that's what I'm going to use. But it makes me wonder what other type of documentation somebody who is here on a regular basis but is not a U.S. citizen, what do they use to board a plane? Keep that in your cap for a second. What I find very, very interesting is I need a Real ID or its equivalent, which would be a passport, to board a U.S. plane. But if I want to take Greyhound and go from Providence to Louisville, Kentucky, they're not going to ask me for a Real ID. Why is that? If I take Amtrak, in fact, I was thinking I'm going out to California in 3 weeks, 4 weeks from today. And I was actually thinking about taking Amtrak. because it's kind of fun to see the USA. Might not be in a Chevrolet, but, get a different view. And I've driven across this country 8 times. And so I'm thinking, well, it'd be kind of fun to let somebody else do the driving. And I can look out the window and not worry about traffic to the left of me, traffic to the right of me, any of that kind of stuff. So that's what I was thinking. And when I was talking to the reservationist at Amtrak, and I brought up, I said, and I'll have my passport. And they said, passport for what? And I said, well, isn't it like boarding a plane? I'm going in June. So they said, oh, no. You don't need to have a real ID or something like that to go on Amtrak unless you're going outside the country. Then I thought, okay, so you don't need it for interstate bus travel. You don't need it for interstate train travel. But the I gotcha is if you want to fly domestically on an airliner. And I wonder, there are a lot of private jets in the United States. If you look over at New Bedford Airport, you'll see a hangar or thereabouts of a hangar, plenty of private jets. My guess is if you get on one of those private jets as a pilot or a passenger, you're probably not going to need a real ID. So what's the big thing here in my mind? And the first thing is, how do you really stop a terror? Are we to believe that a terrorist can't board one of these jets with or without a real ID, with or without a passport? I think the body of work shows that, yes, they can. We had people apparently, I don't really investigate this top to bottom, but the story is there was a guy that tried to light his shoe on fire aboard a jet, and passengers stopped him, rightfully so. But I wonder, because I do this kind of wondering, how real that whole scenario was. But I keep that to me and you. I'm not going to try to say somebody made that story up. But I have often wondered about that. But that person was able to board, and there have been other people that have been able to board. Thankfully, nothing has happened. But the larger question is, what will the real ID stop? It makes you and I spend the money, have to go through the hassle of getting the documentation together. And that real ID doesn't do you any good if you're going to leave the good old US of A. So for the price of, I think, $75, I'll stick with my passport because I do like the idea of traveling outside the country. Last time I did it, I went up to Canada. And I need a passport to go into Canada and to come back from Canada. The real ID ain't going to do it, as they say. So why do I want to put up with it? Why do you put up with it? Yeah. Somebody once said to me, well, carrying your passport around is a lot bulkier. Yeah, it may be, but it's worth it to me. Now, we've got this Hastings Federal Building in downtown New Bedford. Hopefully, I don't have to go in there. I have been in there a couple of times. But hopefully, I never have to go in there again. What does concern me is that you need this real ID to go into federal buildings, like the Hastings building, but also to a federal courthouse. Hopefully I don't get called in to be a juror. But if I do, I can use my passport. And I have no qualms with using the passport if and when necessary. I wonder what would happen to a person who gets called for federal jury duty and says, I don't have a real ID. I don't have a passport. It might be a way to get out of jury duty. And I'm the type of, I want to serve on a jury. I've never been chosen in all the times that I've had to show up. I have never been chosen. And I would love the opportunity to do that part of my so-called civic duty. But now I need to have, again, let me back this up. Why would I need a real ID to go into a federal building? What is that going to stop? How does it stop? I mean, again, a U.S. citizen can commit domestic terrorism just like a foreigner can commit foreign terrorism. 508-996-0500. Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Yep, good. Listen, so I've been listening to you. I listen to every one of your shows, and I think it's great.
Well, thank you. I feel sorry for you.
I have some concerns, though, lately. With this whole smash and grab thing.
Yes.
I don't agree with it.
You don't agree with the smash and grab or agree with my stance on it?
Oh, no, with the smash and grab. I don't like that. But I do know I'm a little bit older. And I know my father always told me you got to listen to what the police say, because if you don't, they're going to hurt you. And if you can't outrun them, you got to listen to them. And I feel like when I hear this whole story, I feel bad for the guy. I do. I feel really bad for the guy. He's trying to do something good for himself and his family. But if I was sitting there and any policeman or any authority told me, get out of the car, I need to talk to you, get out of the car, and I just kept saying, no, 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 I would not expect anything else for them to smash the window and rip me out. And I know that the lawyers and the people that know the law have been on your show for the past few weeks telling all of us that it's our right to say no. But our rights and what really happens are often two different things. And if I told the cop, no, I'm not getting out of my car, I'm not doing this for you, I would not expect anything else for them to smash my window or jack my door open and rip me out. And I don't think the advice that those people are given to the rest of the population is really good advice.
You done?
I'm done.
Okay. So they're giving legal advice according to the law. We can agree on that?
I agree.
Okay. So then what we have, if they are abiding by the law, then the other party may not be abiding by the law.
I agree.
Okay. So who then is at fault? The aggrieved party or the aggriever?
The government party.
Mm-hmm. So, just to counter one of the things that you brought up, it's my understanding, I wasn't there, but it's my understanding that Juan and his wife, Marilu, did not say they weren't going to get out. They said they were waiting for their attorney.
I agree with that also, Brian.
Okay. So if you're allowed to wait and the law seems to be backing you up, then it should not be right for them to for the authorities to be smashing in your window and dragging you out of the vehicle. And as you and I know, there is a pending lawsuit. So
and I agree with everything you just said. I just know my only thing is that I'm saying is that if I tell the cop, no, I'm not doing this, I should expect, and that's what's rotten about, I guess, the whole system. I'm a white guy that grew up in the 70s and 80s, but I would expect the cop to smash my window and drag me out, maybe beat me a little bit with a stick and put me in jail for a couple of days.
For what? For not getting out of your vehicle?
For not listening to what he told me to do.
Well, but you've got rights. I mean, that is what rights are all about. And that's why these guys are supposed to be wearing body cam.
And that would be great if we could see body cam footage of all this. You when you said, I heard you for the past couple of weeks say, yeah, you have had a cop pull a gun on you. And I have too. And then while he was pulled a gun on me, his two friends beat the crap out of me and they threw me in a paddy wagon. And I didn't do anything but just challenge them verbally to ask them what right they had to do this. And they grabbed me and beat me down. They said, this is what right we have. And it's crazy.
And what did you do about it?
Nothing. I spent the night in jail.
I think, if freedom isn't free, you got to fight for the freedom. And I'm not trying to blame you. I don't know more of your particular situation, but you got to fight for this kind of stuff. Now, the cop that pulled the gun on me, when he found out I wasn't the person that he was looking for, I gave him lip. You can believe it.
And his friends didn't do nothing either. You're lucky.
Well, no, there was only the one police officer, and there were two of us, and not that we were going to beat him up.
Yeah, this guy's two friends decided to stick for him and teach me a lesson. But listen, I did 6 years in the United States Army, so it's not that I'm not trying to fight for us to all be free, but the cops, unless I can outrun them and they don't know who I am, I'm pretty much going to do what they tell me to do because I'm scared to death of the power. They have the ability to write false police reports. That's happened to me before. Cop wrote a complete false police report. It was so crazy and so outlandish. I got a lawyer, and as soon as the lawyer brought it to the prosecutors and the judge, they laughed about it and they said, "Oh, this is another one of these." But it wasn't like a New Bedford cop. It was one of the we'll call them auxiliary cops, as a nice way to talk about rent-a-cops. Okay, but they have the authority to write police reports that aren't true. It's crazy. I'm not a big fan of the police. And my father was a firefighter. All his good friends were firefighter and policemen in the town I grew up with. Every night at the table, there'd be policemen and firemen drinking beer all night long. Most of them were in uniform going back out on duty. And then you got, I don't know, this was way long ago. I'm sure, I hope it's not like this nowadays, but I still think it is, You know
what? Your testimony would really go well at the Karen Reed murder trial.
Look,
I hear what you're saying, but you know what? I'm not following it, but there are bits and pieces that always trickle down, and it looks like on one side of the fence there are the police, and why this police officer who had O'Keefe and company at his place never came out. I really don't know, and I don't want to give injustice to the story. But what I am trying to say is
they were all hammered. They were all hammered.
That might be, but what I'm really getting at is we've heard these horror stories before, and there's only one way to get them to stop, and that is for us, we the people, to try to stop them.
When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty.
You know what? And these cops don't fear us. The Congress, Bacon Hill lawmakers, they don't fear us because we wimp away. No offense to you. I'm talking
I'm not taking
collective.
any.
I'm talking collectively here.
I know you are. I know.
All right, man. Thanks for your call.
I just wanted to put that out there.
There are a lot of people that are listening to you right now and have been listening to you, and they're saying you are absolutely 100% correct. And I get it. Hey, thank you for your call. And as he said, he'd get out of the car. There are people who saw this incident that happened on Tallman Street because they have access to the World Wide Web, and they've seen the video footage or they've seen it on television. And there are people that are in this country that are, call them what you want, migrants, undocumented, illegals. They're seeing it too. And they're having conferences about this with attorneys that advocate for them. And you can believe stories like this come up time and time again, and they are told for a reason what to say, how to say it. Show them the paperwork. And according to Attorney Sniffen, who represents Juan Francisco Mendez, he showed the paperwork, but the authorities didn't want to listen. You know, there's a time when a argument gets so heated that the yous and me's, we either fight or we flight. And flight in this particular case seems, again, I haven't talked to Juan. I'm looking for my opportunity to do so. It seemed that he wanted to just stay in the car with his wife. They ripped both of them out. They only made one stay. They didn't want to look to see that they had the wrong person. It's something egregious that seems to be one-sided in this particular case. And the yous and me's, we know it. There have been all kinds of stories. I would have gotten out. Yeah, well, maybe you would have. Maybe you would have. But you're not in Juan's, you're not in Mary Lou's shoes. I'm not either. But here's what I'm thinking, and I'm thinking this after having numerous conversations on air and off air with Attorney Sniffen. Juan and Mary Lou are thinking about that next day in court when he gets stamped to be allowed to be here on a regular basis. And he doesn't want to ruin that chance. And he's seen plenty of videos where people have been rounded up and shipped out of the country. He doesn't want to be a part of that. It's easy to think, and for me to think what I would do in a particular situation until you are actually in that particular situation. I would like to know a lot more about that program. Makes me not want to go to Arkansas. Not that I can't read or write English. What wasn't clear, maybe it was clear to you, if you are employed by a company in Arkansas and you can't read or write English, it's a $10,000 fine, payable on the spot. Now, what is a bit confusing is if you are employed by the company, it doesn't matter what kind of work you're doing. Is this exclusive to people that drive a truck for a company and they're going through Arkansas, or the Arkansas company actually owns, but they can't speak English? I would say this: if you can pass the driving test, you must have some type of comprehension of the rules of the road. You may not speak English well, but does that matter? If stop signs are pretty easy. Stop, S-T-O-P, and it's a big red sign, and that's the universal sign. The triangle in yellow is the universal caution sign. And I suppose there are green signs, but they probably don't need a green sign. What I'm getting at here is, if people understand the rules of the road and they're getting from point A to point B without any problem, why are we hassling anybody because they can't communicate to you in English? And who knows exactly what's on the piece of paper that the driver was given to read. He said it was pretty easy. Well, may have been very easy for him. Again, we had a caller just before the break who talked about obeying what law enforcement officers tell him to do for fear that something bad might happen to him. Well, somebody else could have that same fear and not want to talk or try to read a piece of paper, may have a speech impediment. That person is going to get fined $5,000, or the company that hires him $10,000 if they're in Arkansas. I am hoping that, A, this practice is not happening at all. B, if it was happening, it's been curtailed. C, if it's still going on, that it doesn't happen in any other state. And D, if it is happening in other states, that it doesn't happen here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I guess this kind of dovetails back into the whole thing dealing with the real ID. What does it really do? What does it stop from happening? I am at a loss. Maybe you can figure it out, and please, by all means, bring it to me. What does the real ID do? You've got to board a plane. You've got to go into a federal building. What does that stop you from doing because you've got the real ID? It may keep you from being somebody that isn't a citizen. Okay? But does that mean that U.S. citizens wouldn't try to corrupt a federal building? Timothy McVeigh and company, and I do say that, and company, because he more than alluded to the fact that it was more than just he and the other guy, I forgot his name, that went down with him. They didn't need a real ID to detonate a truck bomb. And there were others, we don't know, who struck the World Trade Center, what was it, in 1993, 95, I forgot which year it was. I'm going to say 93, because 95 was the Mora Federal Building. We don't know. So I come back, what's the real end game here? Are you trying to keep people out of the federal court buildings? Are you trying to keep people off of domestic airline flights? I doubt that, because the airlines, they pay big money to the government. They want people to travel. So that can't be it. What could it be? Because we've got kids who can shoot up schools. They didn't have to show their real ID to do that. I know that's not a plane. I know that's not a federal building. What I'm getting at is you don't need a real ID to commit these heinous crimes. And even if you have a real ID, it doesn't stop you from committing these types of crimes. But everybody had to run out and get with you. Remember the Yanks? Even, during COVID, right, what was it, in 2021, they extended the deadline. I think it's been extended 2 or 3 times in the 20s. And finally, it was activated on, the 7th or the 8th of this month. But as I say, traveling outside the country, you need a passport. Real ID is not going to do it. And the passport, at least for now, is good for 10 years. So let's see. A real ID is good for 5 or 6 years? 5 years? 5 years, okay. So 2 years, that's 2 real IDs at $50 a pop. That's $100. A passport right now is $75, and it's probably going to inch up to $85. But it's less expensive, and it lasts 10 years. Again, to each their own. But you can do more with the passport than you can with the real ID. The real ID might be a lot easier to carry, but it doesn't do anywhere near as much as the passport does. And so for me, for my security, I'm going to stick with the passport. And of course, I've got a driver's license. It would be pretty cool. It would be pretty cool if there could be some kind of notation on the passport that says that you also have a valid driver's license. That would be great. But I don't get that at this particular time. And I'm also at a particular age where I don't know how many more times I'm renewing the driver's license. But I will keep on renewing the passport as long as there's breath in me and that I can reasonably travel to other countries. I don't know. I also wonder, again, I don't see any group, ACLU, indivisible. I don't see folks out protesting the real ID. And I haven't seen any lawyer or lawyer groups go up to Washington, D.C. or a federal court to challenge the constitutionality of the real ID. Why do I say that? You need a real ID to fly in a commercial jet from point A to point B, but you don't need the real ID to travel by train or bus from one destination to another, crossing interstate borders. So how is that fair and just for everyone? Knock on this fake wood. Nobody's trying to do the bad thing to a bus or to the train system. But you tell me why we need this real ID. If somebody can really convince me, maybe I change my mind. But at this particular time, and for the longest time, I have not been convinced. Yes, hello to you.
Hello, Brian.
Hello, Brian.
So a couple of weeks ago, I had to go to the federal building. I'm raising my granddaughter, and I don't have a Social Security card for her. So I had to go in. So I went before the 7th or whatever it was because I don't have a real ID. And then there was some paperwork that I had to fill out later about something else that they sent to me, and I had to go back and take it in. And they didn't ask me for an ID, like with the at the like where the security people are to go in.
Mm-hmm.
I told them that I told them I was bringing in paperwork, and they didn't ask me for a real ID even before I said that. They just let me go, and I said, I'm just dropping off paperwork. So and they told me where the mail slot was. So I don't know.
Was that after May 7th? Was that after May 7th?
Yeah, that was last. That was like Thursday or Friday of this week. And
okay.
I went in and they didn't ask for it. Now, I don't know if I sat down at a window with somebody, if they would have asked me for it, because I didn't do that. I did that before the 7th, but I didn't do that after. But just to walk in, they didn't ask me for it. So I don't know. Maybe they're just not doing it yet. I don't know.
Did you know that you needed documentation?
Yes. I knew I was supposed to have a real ID to go in. So that's what I was going to tell them can I just drop this off, or do I have to mail it in because I don't have a real ID to come in? But they didn't even ask me for one. I went through the security thing and gave them my wallet and my keys, whatever. I walked through, and then I said, I have to drop this paper off. They said there's a slot in the other room where you sit down to go to the windows. So they didn't even ask me for one. So I don't know. Maybe I thought I did all that beforehand because I thought I'm not going to get in there after the 7th because I don't have a real ID. But now I went in Friday, and they didn't even ask for it. So I don't know.
So which federal building was it?
Yeah, the Hastings one downtown.
Oh, downtown. Okay. And, especially after they had that crash.
Right. Well, you know what? I think maybe it was Wednesday, and I was going to go Monday, and I didn't. Now I'm glad I didn't go because the girl crashed into the building or whatever she did. But when I walked in, I had said that I was going to come Monday, but I ended up coming today, so I'm glad. And they were like, "Yeah, good thing you didn't come Monday." But nobody asked me for an ID. They just let me go through like they did the week before when it wasn't needed. So
do you see any need for one?
No, I don't see a need for one. I think it's ridiculous.
Got a passport?
Especially, an old one from when I was maybe 12.
Yeah, that's probably not going to do you any good now.
It's probably not going to help me now. I mean, I'm sure I could renew it if I had to, but yeah, no, I mean, I don't plan on going on a plane anytime soon, so I'm all set.
All right. Well, thank you for your call. Okay. I do appreciate it. 508-996-0500. Thank you for your patience. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
Oh, me. I'm sorry.
You.
I just wondered if I'm going to be the only one in the United States that's not going to get a real ID.
No, I don't have one.
Really? I'm not getting one. And you want to know what it's for? I've even talked to a couple of people about this, and my sister's a retired Navy, and she's got a naval ID, so she doesn't even need it, but she's got it. But she said they're up to something. It's a microchip in there, so I'm thinking maybe they're going to make it like your vaccine passport they're going to throw on there when, or whatever. It's like they already know everything about us already, but I just don't trust the whole deal.
No, I don't either. And to your point, it starts out the way that it is, and you're right, there's a chip in there, but pretty soon you'll have retinal scanning taking over. This is artificial intelligence.
Of course.
At its, I don't know if I'm going to say at its best or at its worst, but
yeah.
it reeks of it.
It's going to be like China.
Yeah, China uses that kind of stuff all over.
Facial recognition, so when I go to the doctor, I stand up so I don't sit down so they can't take my picture. And one time I wore sunglasses and a big hat so they couldn't take my picture because I don't want facial recognition. I'm old now. I don't care. Leave me alone. That's how I feel.
Well, no, I think you have a good feeling about it. Plus, you know as well as I do, I'm probably better than I do. You're not going to catch everybody, and just because you have a real ID doesn't mean you're not up to nefarious stuff.
Correct. My sister, she moved to Charleston, and she says, Oh, she screamed at me. I won't scream. Oh, you got to get one so they'll know you're an American. I said, I'm 75. I said, if they don't know I'm American now, then who cares?
And so what?
They want it for, but that's what she
so you
saying.
are an American. What does that mean?
That I was born here?
No, that part I get, but I mean,
well, when you become a
U.S.
citizen
citizens
from another country, you become a citizen here.
You
then
can
you're
be,
an American
but
too.
you can. It doesn't preclude you from going into a federal building for whatever. And a U.S. citizen, as you know, I used Timothy McVeigh. Obviously, he didn't go in the building in 1995, but you can do evil with or without a real ID, with or without being a person from this country or naturalized in this country.
I did plenty of evil before I became a police officer.
And there you go.
That's a joke, but
no, we believe you. We believe you. All right. Are you?
At least I'm not the only one that's not going to get one. You're in the same boat.
Are you on the water yet?
What water?
By Pope's Island. Is that you? No.
No. That's I think she's younger than I am. But anyway, no, it's not her.
Oh, I thought it was you for some reason.
This is me that texted you during COVID about because you said you got pneumonia. Oh,
yes. And yes, I did get it off of that.
You say, do you think I should get a thing? I mean, I'm anti-vax, I'm anti-social, I'm anti-establishment, so I kind of live on the grid, but I don't.
Yeah, but you're not anti-vacuum cleaner.
No, that's my neighbor with his leaf blower. He's been out there for days, it seems.
A lot of leaves.
I came out to check my dogs.
All right. Hey, thank you.
Rabbit hunting in the yard.
Rabbits.
I know I have to make sure everything's okay. But I'm glad that everything's... I didn't know you were on the finance committee at Dartmouth.
No, I'm not on the finance committee. But I'm a town meeting member, and the finance committee sent out a mailing to all town meeting members.
Oh, town meeting, yeah. Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. 508-996-0500. It's good to know that I'm not the only one not getting a real ID. I really believe that there are numerous of us around the country not getting one of these, especially if you have a passport. Now, I'm sure there'll be people that get both because they don't want to carry the passport if they don't have to. I just take the passport. All right. If you'd like to squeeze one, I'm going to take a break. I guess we could still do one after the break. I'm Brian. This is Freedom Fools on WBSM. He sure is, and I'll be back. I don't know if I'll be in black on Monday. 6 o'clock. Tim will get you started 6 a.m. on Monday, and then Chris, then Barry after O'Reilly. Adios.
Traveling around from town to town. Sometimes I think I'll settle down, but I know I'd hunger to be free. Roving's the only life for me. Adrift in the world is my friend. I'm traveling